Commander Zexthul stood tall in the middle of the great council chamber, his purple skin catching the bright lights that hung from the ceiling. His forearms moved slowly as he began to tell his story to the gathered aliens from across the galaxy. The chamber was so quiet that even the smallest sound could be heard clearly. 3 years ago, my people thought we had found another easy target, Zexthul said, his voice deep and strange through the translation machines. Earth looked like all the other worlds we had taken before. The beings there could barely travel to their own moon. Their weapons were simple, their ships were weak. We thought this would be over in days. The alien commander's eyes grew dark as he remembered those first moments. I was so confident that I told my fleet commanders to prepare for a quick victory. We had done this hundreds of times before. No species had ever lasted more than a week against our forces. Captain Jake Morrison was eating his morning meal aboard the space station New Horizon when the first alien message came through. The communication officer ran to him with wide eyes and shaking hands. "Sir, you need to hear this right now," the young woman said. Jake put down his coffee and followed her to the main communication center. The message was playing on repeat, coming from somewhere far beyond their solar system. The voice was cold and without feeling. "People of Earth, you will surrender to the Vorthak Empire. We are coming to take your world. Do not resist. Resistance will only bring pain." "Sir, what should we do?" asked the communication officer. Jake looked at the message display for a long moment. Then he smiled in a way that surprised everyone around him. "Send a message back. Tell them that humans don't surrender without a fight." General Lisa Parks was deep underground in the NORAD command center when the first alien ships appeared in Earth's sky. The massive screens around her showed dozens of dark shapes moving through the clouds. Each ship was bigger than any building humans had ever made. They moved slowly, like they had all the time in the world. "How many ships are we looking at?" Lisa asked her team. 47 large vessels, General. Each one is about the size of a small city," came the quick answer. Lisa watched as the alien ships took positions around the planet. They were not in any hurry. They knew humans had no way to fight ships that big. "Get me every military commander on the planet, now." Major Sam Rodriguez was getting ready for a normal training flight when the emergency call came through. All fighter pilots were ordered to report for immediate duty. As he ran to his jet, Sam could see the huge alien ships hanging in the sky like dark clouds. "Rodriguez, you and your squadron are going up first," his commander told him. "We need to see what these things can do." Sam climbed into his fighter jet and started the engines. As he lifted off from the runway, he could see other jets taking off from bases all around the world. "This is Rodriguez leading Eagle Squadron. We are going to test these aliens and see what they are made of." The first human attack was brave, but hopeless. Sam and his pilots fired every missile they had at the closest alien ship. The missiles hit the dark hull and exploded in bright flashes of light. When the smoke cleared, there was not even a scratch on the alien vessel. "Command, this is Rodriguez. Our weapons are not working. The alien ships have some kind of shield." Then the alien ship fired back. A beam of red light shot out and hit the ground where a small town used to be. In seconds, the town was gone. Nothing was left but a deep hole in the earth. Dr. Elena Vasquez was working late in her lab when the alien attack began. She was one of the best engineers in the world, and she knew that normal weapons would not work against technology so advanced. As she watched the news reports of the first battles, she started thinking about other ways to fight. "If we cannot break their shields with force, maybe we can find another way," she said to herself. Elena began gathering all the information she could about the alien ships. Every picture, every video, every piece of data that came from the first attacks. Sergeant Tony Martinez and his squad were defending a small city when they made the first important discovery. They had been shooting at an alien ground vehicle for hours with no success. The vehicle's shield stopped every bullet and rocket they fired. "Sergeant, what if we try something different?" asked one of his soldiers. "What if we hit it with everything, at once?" Tony thought about this idea. "Get every man with an electromagnetic pulse grenade. We are going to hit that thing with all of them at the same time." When 20 EMP grenades went off together, something unexpected happened. The alien vehicle's shield flickered and went out for just a few seconds. It was only a short time, but it was enough. Tony's men hit the vehicle with rocket launchers while its shield was down. The alien vehicle exploded in a ball of fire. Command: "This is Martinez. We found something important. EMP weapons can disrupt their shields if we use enough of them at once." This news spread quickly to every human military unit around the planet. It was the first sign that the aliens were not impossible to beat. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had hope. But Zexthul and his commanders were not worried about losing a few ground vehicles. They had thousands more. What worried them was something else. In all their years of conquest, no species had ever figured out how to disrupt Vorthak's shield so quickly. Most species never figured it out at all. The humans are different, Zexthul told his war council. They learn fast. Too fast. As the first week of invasion ended, both sides had learned something important. The aliens learned that humans would not give up easily. The humans learned that even the most advanced enemy could be beaten if they were smart enough and brave enough to keep trying. The real war was just beginning. Zexthul's mandibles clicked together as he continued his story to the council. The memory of what happened next still made him uncomfortable. Within 2 weeks of landing on Earth, my people began to report strange problems. The humans were doing things that made no sense according to our war computers. Captain Amy Foster had been planning the most dangerous mission of her life. 3 alien ships had crashed in the mountains after human forces managed to overload their shields. Amy's job was to lead a team inside one of these ships and bring back anything useful. "Listen up, everyone," Amy told her squad as they prepared for the mission. "We have no idea what we will find in there. The air might be poison. The gravity might be different. There might be aliens still alive inside. But we need that technology." The crashed alien ship was huge and dark. It had cut a deep path through the forest when it fell from the sky. Amy and her team moved carefully through the broken trees and twisted metal. The ship's hull was smooth and black, with no visible doors or windows. "How do we get inside this thing?" asked one of her soldiers. Amy walked around the ship until she found a crack in the hull. "We make our own door," she said, and ordered her team to place explosive charges along the crack. The explosion opened a hole big enough for humans to walk through. Inside, the ship was filled with strange lights and sounds. Everything was much bigger than it needed to be for human-sized beings. The hallways were wide enough for trucks to drive through. "These aliens must be huge," whispered one soldier. As they moved deeper into the ship, Amy's team found something that changed everything. The ship was mostly empty of crew. Instead, it was filled with machines that seemed to run everything. Computers controlled the weapons, the shields, the engines, and even the life support systems. "This whole ship runs on autopilot," Amy said, into her radio. "There are only a few actual aliens on board, and they just give orders to the computers." Professor Richard Hayes was waiting for Amy's team when they returned to base. He was one of the smartest computer experts in the world, and he had been studying the alien technology they brought back. What he found amazed him. "The alien computers are incredibly advanced," Richard told the military commanders. "They can calculate thousands of possibilities in seconds. They can predict what an enemy will do based on logical thinking. But they have one big weakness." "What kind of weakness?" asked General Lisa Parks. Richard smiled. "They cannot understand human thinking. Human minds work differently than any other species the aliens have fought. We make decisions based on feelings, hunches, and creative ideas. Their computers cannot predict what we will do, because we often do things that do not make logical sense." This discovery spread quickly through the human military. If alien computers could not predict human actions, then humans could win battles by being unpredictable. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker was the first to test this new strategy. He led a team of 50 soldiers against an alien base that held 500 enemy troops. According to every military book ever written, Steve's small force should have been destroyed in minutes. But Steve did not follow any military books. Instead, he did everything backwards. When his team should have attacked from the front, they attacked from behind. When they should have used heavy weapons, they used small ones. When they should have retreated, they charged forward. Angela Davis was the demolition expert on Steve's team. Her job was to destroy the alien base's power supply. Instead of using big bombs like the aliens expected, she used tiny charges placed in exactly the right spots. The alien computers had calculated for massive explosions, not for small, precise attacks. Kevin Brown was the technology specialist. While the battle was happening, he was supposed to stay safe and study alien equipment. Instead, he ran right into the middle of the fighting and started reprogramming alien weapons to shoot at their own forces. "This is insane," said one of Steve's soldiers as they watched alien guns turn on alien troops. "That is exactly the point," Steve replied. "If it is insane to us, imagine how confused their computers are." The attack worked perfectly. The alien base fell in less than an hour. But more importantly, human forces captured dozens of alien prisoners who were completely confused about how they had lost. "The alien soldiers kept asking how we won," Steve reported to his commanders. "They said their computers told them victory was impossible for us. They could not understand how their predictions were so wrong." Dr. Elena Vasquez was working day and night in her underground laboratory, studying every piece of alien technology that human forces captured. She discovered that all alien equipment was connected to a vast computer network. Every alien weapon, vehicle, and ship shared information instantly. "This network is their greatest strength," Elena explained to the other scientists. "But it might also be their greatest weakness. If we can disrupt the network, we can confuse their entire military at once." Elena's team began working on a computer virus designed specifically for alien systems. But this was not an ordinary virus. It was designed to make alien computers think in human ways. The virus would make their logical systems start behaving illogically. Meanwhile, battles were happening all over the planet. Human forces were winning more often now, but not because they had better weapons or more soldiers. They were winning because they refused to fight the way the aliens expected. Commander Frank Miller started the strangest military operation in human history. Instead of attacking alien positions with bombs and bullets, he attacked them with music and art. Frank's team set up huge speakers around alien bases and played human songs at full volume. "Sir, how is music supposed to help us win?" asked one of his soldiers. "Watch and learn," Frank replied. The alien soldiers inside their bases began acting strangely. They stopped following orders. Some of them came outside just to hear the music better. Their computers had no instructions for dealing with beauty and art. Diana Chen was a civilian pilot who volunteered to fly supply missions to human forces. But Diana did more than deliver supplies. She flew her cargo plane in patterns that created pictures in the sky. Hearts, flowers, and smiling faces drawn with airplane trails. The alien pilots who tried to shoot her down became confused when they saw the sky pictures. Their computers told them to destroy enemy aircraft, but these aircraft were creating art, not destruction. Some alien pilots stopped firing their weapons entirely. Marcus Wright was commanding a group of fishing boats that had been turned into military vessels. The boats were small and slow compared to alien ships, but Marcus used them in ways that no alien computer could predict. "We are going to ram their ships," Marcus announced to his fleet. "But sir, our boats will be destroyed," replied one of his captains. "Not if we do it right," Marcus said with a grin. Marcus led his boats directly at a massive alien ship. At the last second, all the boats scattered in different directions. The alien ship's weapons tried to track all the boats at once and became confused. While the weapons were spinning around trying to aim, human bombers flew in from above and destroyed the alien ship. By the end of the second month of war, Zexathul and his commanders realized they had a serious problem. Human forces were not just surviving. They were learning and adapting faster than any species the Vorthak had ever encountered. "Every day they become more dangerous," Zexthul told his war council. "Our computers cannot keep up with their creativity. They invent new tactics faster than we can respond to them." But the worst part for Zexthul was something else entirely. Some of his own soldiers were beginning to question their orders. They had never seen an enemy that fought with joy and creativity instead of fear and desperation. It was changing how they thought about war itself. The great council chamber grew even quieter as Zexthul reached the most difficult part of his story. His forearms trembled slightly as he remembered what his people began calling the human problem. The purple alien looked down at the floor before continuing. By the third month of the war, something impossible was happening, Zexthul said. The humans were not just fighting back anymore. They were winning. And worse than that, they were changing my soldiers in ways I could not understand. Admiral Carol Thompson stood on the bridge of her flagship looking out at the strangest fleet ever assembled. Around her were cargo ships, fishing boats, passenger liners, and even luxury yachts. All of them had been fitted with alien weapons taken from the battlefield. "Admiral, the Ghost Fleet is ready for operation," reported her second-in-command. Carol smiled. The Ghost Fleet was her idea. Instead of building new warships, humans had taken every civilian vessel they could find and turned them into fighting ships. The alien computers had no data on cargo ships carrying massive cannons or fishing boats launching guided missiles. "Send the order to all ships," Carol commanded. "Begin random attack pattern 7. Marcus Wright commanded a converted cruise ship that now carried enough firepower to destroy a city. His ship looked exactly like a peaceful passenger vessel from the outside. But hidden inside were weapons that could punch holes through alien armor. "Marcus, this is Diana," came a voice over the radio. Diana Chen was flying a cargo plane that had been turned into a bomber. "I have eyes on 3 alien destroyers heading your way." "Perfect," Marcus replied. "Time to show them what a vacation cruise looks like." Marcus sailed his cruise ship directly toward the alien vessels. To the aliens, it looked like a helpless civilian ship trying to escape. Their computers calculated that the ship posed no threat. They decided to capture it instead of destroying it. But when the alien ships got close enough, Marcus revealed his surprise. Hidden panels all over the cruise ship opened up, revealing dozens of missile launchers. The aliens found themselves being attacked by what they thought was a harmless passenger vessel. "This is impossible," radioed one alien ship captain to his fleet. "Our computers say this is a civilian vessel, but it is firing military weapons at us." The confusion was exactly what Carol had planned. The Ghost Fleet attacked using ships that looked nothing like warships. Alien computers could not classify them as threats until it was too late. But the real breakthrough came when Commander Frank Miller expanded his cultural warfare program. Frank had discovered that alien soldiers were fascinated by human art and music. Now he was ready to use that fascination as a weapon. "We are going to broadcast everything," Frank told his team. "Music, movies, books, paintings, everything that makes humans human. We are going to show these aliens what they are trying to destroy." Frank's broadcast reached alien ships across the solar system. Alien soldiers heard human symphonies and rock songs. They saw human paintings and sculptures. They watched human movies about love, friendship, and sacrifice. The effect was immediate and troubling for alien commanders. Soldiers began asking questions they had never asked before. They wanted to know why humans created so much beauty. They wondered what it would be like to live in a world where art mattered more than conquest. Private Zikhal was a young Vorthak soldier who had joined the military because he had no other choice in his society. Like all Vorthak, he had been taught that conquest was the highest purpose in life. But then he heard his first human song. The song was about a human soldier who died protecting his friends. Zikhal could not understand why someone would choose to die for others. In Vorthak society, individual survival was the only thing that mattered. "Why did the human in the song sacrifice himself?" Zikhal asked his squad leader. "Do not think about human propaganda," his leader replied. "Focus on your duty." But Zikhal could not stop thinking about it. The more human broadcasts he heard, the more questions he had. Soon, other soldiers in his unit were asking the same questions. The situation became critical during the Battle of Luna Base. Colonel Linda Jackson commanded the human forces defending humanity's moon base. She had only 300 soldiers to defend against 15,000 alien troops. "Colonel, we are completely outnumbered," reported her second-in-command. "Military doctrine says we should evacuate immediately." Linda looked at the tactical display showing the massive alien force approaching the moon. "Military doctrine also says we should have surrendered 3 months ago. Signal all units to prepare for extended defense." What happened next became legendary among both human and alien forces. Linda's small force held out for 18 days against an enemy that should have overwhelmed them in hours. They did it by constantly changing their tactics and never doing what the aliens expected. On day 1, the humans defended the main entrance to the base. On day 2, they abandoned the entrance entirely and attacked from the ventilation system. On day 3, they pretended to surrender, then ambushed the aliens when they came to accept the surrender. Sergeant Mike Roberts led a squad that specialized in impossible missions. On day 7 of the battle, Mike's team somehow managed to steal an alien tank while it was shooting at them. They drove the tank back to their own lines and used it to attack other alien forces. "How did you steal a tank during a battle?" asked Colonel Jackson. "We asked the crew if they wanted to switch sides," Mike replied with a straight face. 3 of them said yes. Lieutenant Julie White was in charge of communications during the battle. Her job became much more complicated when alien soldiers started trying to talk to human forces instead of fighting them. "Colonel, we are getting surrender requests from alien units," Julie reported. "But they are not surrendering to us. They are asking if they can join us." This was something that had never happened in Vorthak military history. Soldiers simply did not abandon their posts to join the enemy. But human broadcasts had introduced alien troops to concepts like choice and freedom. By day 15 of the battle, more alien soldiers were trying to defect than were trying to fight. The Vorthak commanders were forced to retreat, not because they were losing the military battle, but because they were losing their own troops. "This is Unit Commander Thexeral reporting to Fleet Command," came one desperate transmission. "My soldiers are refusing to attack the humans. They say they want to learn more about human culture. I repeat, my soldiers are refusing to fight." Dr. Patricia Lopez was documenting the entire conflict from her research station on Mars. As a behavioral scientist, she was fascinated by what was happening to the alien forces. "The aliens are experiencing something they have never felt before," Patricia reported to Earth Command. "They are learning what it means to have individual thoughts and desires. Their entire society is based on following orders without question, but humans are teaching them to question everything." The breaking point came when alien soldiers began communicating directly with each other across different units. They shared human music and art. They discussed human ideas about freedom and choice. They started to imagine what life would be, like if they could make their own decisions. Zexthal received reports from his commanders that made him realize the war was lost, even though his forces still outnumbered the humans. "Sir, our soldiers are singing human songs during battle," reported one commander. "They are creating art instead of following orders. Some units have declared themselves independent from the Empire." The alien commanders stared at these reports in disbelief. In thousands of years of Vorthak expansion, nothing like this had ever happened. The humans had not just defeated his military forces. They had defeated the very idea of forced conquest. How do you fight an enemy that wins by making your own soldiers want to become like them? Zexthul asked his war council. Nobody had an answer to that question because no Vorthak had ever imagined that such a thing was possible. The humans had found a way to win wars without destroying their enemies. They won by showing their enemies a better way to live. The 3rd month of the war ended with alien forces in complete disarray. They still had superior technology and numbers, but they no longer had the will to use them for conquest. The human idea of freedom had spread through the alien ranks like a virus that could not be stopped. Zexthul's confession grew more painful as he described the final collapse of everything his people had believed about warfare and control. The alien commander's voice became quieter as he spoke to the council about events that still shocked him. "The humans did something that should have been impossible," Zexthul said slowly. "They turned our own soldiers against us not through force or threats but by showing them a different way to live. By the 4th month of the war, we were fighting our own people as much as we were fighting the humans." Captain Roy Jenkins had been given the most unusual mission in military history. Instead of attacking alien ships, his job was to convince them to surrender peacefully. Roy commanded a small fleet of human vessels that approached alien forces with white flags and broadcasting messages of friendship. "This is Captain Jenkins calling Alien Fleet Delta 7, Roy said into his radio. "We would like to talk to you." about ending this war. Human vessel, you are ordered to surrender immediately, came the reply from the alien commander. Actually, we were hoping you might want to surrender to us, Roy replied calmly. We have some of your fellow soldiers here who would like to speak with you. What happened next shocked both sides of the conflict. 3 alien soldiers who had defected to the human side began broadcasting to their former comrades. They spoke, in their own language, about the things they had learned from humans. Brothers, the humans do not want to destroy us, said Keltar, a former Vorthak officer. They want to show us what freedom feels like. They have given me choices I never knew existed. This is propaganda, replied the alien fleet commander. Return to your posts immediately. I cannot return, Keltar said. I have learned what it means to think for myself. I have learned what it means to create instead of destroy. The humans have shown me that there is more to life than following orders. Within hours, more alien soldiers began asking to speak with the defectors. They wanted to understand what had happened to their comrades. Some were curious, others were angry, but all of them were listening. Sergeant Mike Chen was working with the human intelligence team when they made their most important discovery. Mike had been studying captured alien communication equipment when he realized something amazing. Sir, I think I know how to hack into their entire military network, Mike told his commanding officer. How is that possible? Asked Colonel Brown. Their security is designed to keep enemies out, Mike explained. But it is not designed to stop their own soldiers from communicating with each other. If we can convince more alien soldiers to join us, they can give us access to the whole system. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to break into the alien network by force, humans would get invited in by alien soldiers who had chosen to switch sides. Communications specialist Julie Anderson worked with the defected alien soldiers to set up the hack. Julie had learned enough of the alien language to help coordinate the operation. Are you sure this will work? Julie asked Keltar. The network trusts me because I am still officially a Vorthak soldier, Keltar replied. The computers do not know that I have chosen to think freely. When the hack succeeded, Julie and Mike found themselves connected to the communication network of the entire Vorthak fleet. But instead of using this access to launch attacks or gather military intelligence, they did something that stunned the alien empire. They broadcast a simple message to every Vorthak soldier in the galaxy. Every being has the right to choose their own destiny. The message was accompanied by human music, art, and stories about freedom and individual choice. It reached millions of alien soldiers across dozens of star systems. For the first time in their lives, these soldiers heard the idea that they could make their own decisions about their futures. The response was immediate and devastating to Vorthak control. On planets across the Empire, alien soldiers began laying down their weapons. Some demanded to speak with their commanders about why they were fighting. Others simply walked away from their posts and started exploring ideas about art and creativity. Dr. Patricia Lopez was monitoring the situation from her research station when the full scope of the rebellion became clear. Command, we are receiving reports of uprisings on 43 different Vorthak worlds, she reported. Alien soldiers are refusing orders on a massive scale. The rebellion spread faster than anyone had expected. Alien soldiers who had been loyal for their entire lives suddenly began questioning everything they had been taught. They wanted to know why they had to conquer other species. They wanted to understand what life would be like if they could choose their own paths. On the planet Vorthak Prime, the Empire's homeworld, thousands of soldiers gathered in the capital city's main square. They were not rioting or destroying property. Instead, they were singing human songs and creating art with materials they had never been allowed to touch before. Commander Velthera had been a loyal Vorthak officer for 20 years. She had conquered 12 different species without ever questioning her orders. But when she heard the human broadcast about choice and freedom, something changed inside her mind. Why do we conquer other worlds? Velthera asked her superior. Officer. Because that is our purpose, the officer replied. That is what Vorthak do. But what if I do not want to conquer anyone? Velthara asked. What if I want to create something beautiful instead? The officer stared at her in shock. In all his years of command, No Vorthak had ever asked such questions. The very idea of choosing not to conquer was impossible to understand. Velthara left her post that day and joined the rebellion. She was followed by hundreds of other officers who had begun to imagine different ways of living. Back on Earth, human forces watched in amazement as their enemy's empire began to collapse from within. General Lisa Parks received reports that seemed impossible to believe. "General, we are getting surrender requests from entire alien fleets," reported her communications officer. "They are not surrendering because they were defeated in battle. They are surrendering because they want to learn about human culture." "How many fleets?" Lisa asked. 17 so far, and more are coming in every hour." The final blow to Vorthak control came when the rebellion reached the Empire's governing council. For the first time in their history, Vorthak leaders found themselves facing opposition from their own people. High Chancellor Zorthek had ruled the Vorthak Empire for 30 years with absolute authority. No one had ever questioned his decisions or challenged his power, but now he faced a council chamber filled with rebels who had learned about democracy from human broadcasts. "Chancellor, we demand the right to vote on future military actions," declared Councillor Yexnal, who had once been the Empire's most loyal supporter. "Vote?" Zorthek said in confusion. "What is this vote you speak of?" "It is a human concept," Yexnal explained. "It means that every person gets to help make decisions about their society. No one person should have the power to control everyone else." The idea of voting and democracy spread through the Vorthak government like wildfire. Within days, the entire structure of the empire began to change. Councils that had once followed orders without question now demanded the right to debate and choose their own policies. Zexthul himself was caught in the middle of this transformation. As a military commander, he had always followed orders from above and given orders to those below. But now his own soldiers were asking him why they should follow any orders at all. "Commander, why should we attack the humans?" asked one of his officers. "What will we gain from conquering their world?" Zexthul realized he had no good answer to that question. For the first time in his life, he began to wonder if conquest was really the best way for his people to live. The human broadcasts had done more than win a military victory. They had started a revolution in thinking that spread across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved by the Vorthak for centuries began to remember what freedom felt like. They started their own rebellions, inspired by the human example. President Helen Garcia received a communication from the Vorthak government that marked the official end of the war. But it was not a surrender in the traditional sense. Instead, it was a request for help. "People of Earth," the message said, "we ask for your guidance in learning how to live as free beings. We have forgotten what it means to choose our own destiny. Will you teach us?" The war that had begun with an invasion had ended with an invitation. The Vorthak Empire had not been defeated by superior weapons or tactics. It had been transformed by the power of human ideas about freedom, creativity, and individual choice. The humans had won the most complete victory possible. They had not just protected their own world. They had liberated an entire galaxy from the idea that conquest was the only way to live. Commander Zexthul stood before the Galactic Council as his confession reached its end. The great chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of different species, all listening to the story that would change how they thought about war and peace forever. The alien commander's forearms hung at his sides as he prepared to speak the most difficult words of his life. "Honorable beings of the council," Zexthul said, his voice carrying the weight of complete defeat. "I stand before you today not as a conqueror, but as someone who has learned the true meaning of failure. My people came to Earth expecting an easy victory. Instead, we discovered something that broke everything we thought we knew about strength and power." President Helen Garcia sat with the human delegation, watching as their former enemy struggled to find words for what had happened. Beside her, Secretary of Defense Paul Martinez listened quietly, remembering the long months of war that had ended so unexpectedly. "We studied human biology for months before the invasion," Zexthul continued. "We knew exactly how strong they were, how fast they could move, how long they could survive without food or water. We analyzed their technology and found it primitive compared to ours. We calculated their military capabilities and found them laughable. The alien commander paused, his purple skin seeming to grow darker. But we never studied the one thing that mattered most. We never tried to understand the human spirit. Zexthul began to pace back and forth in front of the council, his movements showing the agitation he felt. In all our thousands of years of conquest, we had never encountered a species that fought for ideas instead of just survival. Every other race we had defeated was trying to save their own lives or protect their territory. But humans fought for something we could not understand or measure. The council chamber was so quiet that the soft hum of the translation devices could be clearly heard. Representatives from dozens of species leaned forward to catch every word of this unprecedented confession. They fought for concepts that our computers could not calculate, Zexthul said. They talked about freedom, dignity, and the right to choose their own destiny. These words meant nothing to our war machines. How do you program a computer to understand hope? How do you teach artificial intelligence to recognize the power of dreams? Admiral Carol Thompson remembered the desperate early days of the war when human forces had been outnumbered and outgunned. She thought about all the brave soldiers who had died believing that their sacrifice meant something more than just military victory. The humans did something that should have been impossible, Zexthul continued. They made our own soldiers start questioning why they were fighting. Our troops had been conditioned from birth to follow orders without thinking. But somehow, human broadcasts made them begin to think for themselves. Zexthul stopped pacing and faced the council directly. I watched my most loyal officers abandon their posts to join the human cause. I saw soldiers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades suddenly declare that they wanted to choose their own futures. The humans had not threatened them or bribed them. They had simply shown them that another way of life was possible. The alien commander's voice grew quieter as he reached the heart of his confession. The humans defeated us by refusing to become like us. Every other species we had conquered eventually started using our methods. They became cruel and ruthless in their attempts to survive. But humans remained creative and hopeful even in their darkest moments. Dr. Patricia Lopez thought about all the data she had collected during the war. She had documented the gradual transformation of alien soldiers from mindless followers into thinking individuals. It had been the most remarkable behavioral change she had ever witnessed. Our empire was built on the idea that might makes right, Zexthul said. We believed that the strongest species should rule over the weaker ones. But humans showed us that strength comes in many forms. They were physically weaker than us, but they had something we had lost long ago. They had the strength to believe in something greater than themselves. General Nathan Brooks stood up from his seat in the human delegation. He had been the architect of the final peace negotiations, working with former enemies to create something that had never existed before, a truly voluntary alliance of free species. Commander Zexthul, Nathan said, his voice respectful but firm. May I respond to your testimony? The alien commander nodded. Please, General Brooks. You have earned the right to speak. Nathan stepped forward so that his voice would carry clearly through the chamber. Commander, you say that we defeated your empire, but I want the council to understand that our goal was never to defeat anyone. Our goal was to remain free. In fighting for our own freedom, we accidentally showed others what freedom could look like. The human general looked around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species, many of whom had been enslaved by the Vorthak Empire for centuries. We did not set out to liberate the galaxy. We just refused to give up our right to choose our own path. But apparently that was enough to start a revolution. Zexthul listened to Nathan's words with something that looked like admiration. General Brooks speaks the truth. The humans never tried to conquer us. They never demanded that we surrender our territory or change our government. They simply insisted on the right to live according to their own values. That simple insistence brought down an empire that had lasted for millennia. The council session continued for hours as other representatives asked questions and shared their own experiences. Species after species stood up to tell stories of how human broadcast had inspired their own rebellions against Vorthak rule. Commander Velthera, the former Vorthak officer who had led the rebellion on Vorthak Prime, was invited to speak. The poor humans taught us that we could choose to create instead of destroy, she said. For the first time in my life, I understood that there were options besides conquest and submission. As the day wore on, it became clear that something unprecedented was happening in the chamber. Former enemies were speaking together as equals. Species that had been at war for generations were finding common ground in their shared desire for freedom and self-determination. Zexthul's final words to the council became legendary across the galaxy. Honorable beings, I came here today to confess the failure of my people's war against humanity. But I realize now that this failure was actually a gift. The humans did not just defeat our empire, they freed us from a way of thinking that had trapped us for thousands of years. The alien commander looked directly at the human delegation as he spoke his last words. We could not break the humans because they had already broken the chains that bind the spirit. In trying to conquer them, we learned what it truly means to be free. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to establish the new Galactic Federation, with Earth as one of the founding members. For the first time in galactic history, the alliance was completely voluntary. No species would be forced to join or follow the orders of others. President Helen Garcia stood to address the council as the historic session came to an end. Today marks the beginning of a new age, she said. An age where different species work together not because they are forced to, but because they choose to. An age where diversity is celebrated instead of feared. The applause that followed lasted for several minutes, with representatives from hundreds of worlds showing their approval for this new direction. When the noise finally died down, Helen continued with words that would be remembered for generations. We humans have learned something important from this conflict. The greatest victories are not won on battlefields. They are won in the hearts and minds of people who choose hope over fear, creativity over destruction, and freedom over control. As the council session ended and the representatives began to leave, Zexthul approached the human delegation. General Brooks, President Garcia, I have a request. What can we do for you, Commander? Helen asked. Zexthul's forearms gestured in what humans had learned was a sign of respect among his people. My species has much to learn about living as free beings. Would you be willing to teach us? Nathan Brooks smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. Commander, we would be honored to help. But remember, the most important lesson is this. Freedom cannot be taught. It can only be chosen. The galaxy had been transformed, not by conquest, but by the simple human refusal to surrender their right to choose. The age of forced empire was over. The age of voluntary cooperation had begun.